Minister, I'm just a little bit confused here. If the system is going to work across the United Kingdom, surely the same level of deposit should be charged on containers across the whole of the United Kingdom, which is what I think is the intention of the UK Internal Market Act. Is that not right?
It would be wonderful to have the same level of deposit across the UK. We've passed regulations saying that would be 20 pence here, but we don't know what it might be in the rest of the UK, so I can't comment on what that might be.
So is your view that you want to impose the level you want on the rest of the United Kingdom, or is it that you just believe the United Kingdom should do what you are doing?
It is my view that the Scottish Parliament should be able to legislate on fully devolved matters, and that the deposit in Scotland is 20 pence. Now, that number has not been pulled out of thin air. That is the result of many, many years of work to develop that as the right amount for the deposit. So I think it would make sense for the UK government, when setting its deposit, to look at the work we have done and to work together on it with us. But these things need cooperation and they need discussion, and that is not what we've had. We've had this 11th hour intervention saying we might change this.
Minister, with greatest respect,
but we don't know what that might look like.
I'm trying to keep the politics out of this. So what I'm trying to work out is if, say, the rest of the United Kingdom decided that it was 10p for a can rather than 20p, do you think if that is the majority decision, that would be the wrong way to go?
It depends what the convener considers a majority decision. We know the Welsh are considering a scheme along the lines of ours. For example, they had included glass. So are you measuring a majority decision by the largest nation? Are you suggesting the largest nation should impose it? Or are you suggesting that we are a group of 4 nations and we should agree this between how many nations wish to go ahead with a different scheme?
Well, I think it's all about making sure the market's correct. I think that's where we need to be. And what slightly concerns me is that you seem to be wedded to a figure that would mean it could be higher or lower in Scotland, which could mean that there would be problems with the internal market, which is what the Act is trying to protect.
Sorry, I'll come to you in a second, David. Scotland's regulations for deposit return with that 20 pence deposit were, of course, passed in advance of the Internal Market Act and cover a fully devolved matter. So when those regulations were passed, that was done on basis of work and research about what would be the right deposit level for our scheme. I'll pass over to David.
Sorry, Minister, Hayden may want to come in as well. It was just to be clear that we work very closely with counterparts and across UK at official level. We've engaged very positively. Hayden, colleagues in particular, engaged very positively with colleagues across the UK on a number of these issues for a long time now in discussing this. The change has actually been about the fact that in the past we have been making these decisions, pushing forward with the idea of delivering our scheme, and then the rest of the UK schemes coming into place, where we've always thought that interoperability would be an important point and we'd want to do. But the change now has been that we have been, with the IMA decision, was that we couldn't go ahead without agreeing these things in advance and allowing us to push forward with the decisions that we had, which caused that uncertainty, because we couldn't actually say to businesses at this point, this is the position on these issues, because we're being told we can't go ahead without these issues being aligned now in advance of that decision. Whereas we always knew in the longer term we'd want to work with our UK government counterparts to ensure there was as much interoperability as possible. So the change in context is the fact that we were already in discussions on all of these issues with the UK government, but only through the IMA processes have been made clear that we can't go ahead without agreeing these things at a 4 nations level, which is a relatively new intervention. So
was the mood music that 20p was the right level to set?
The decision from Hayden may want to come in this, but our decision from our colleagues in DEFRA in Wales, for example, is that they haven't made a decision yet on what their appropriate deposit level would be, and they would have to kind of work through what that meant, both in terms of the impact on businesses, but also in terms of the impact on the deposit management organisation, which doesn't exist as yet, in the sense that they have to understand what the mechanics means for that business model, what that means for the businesses themselves. So at the moment, they haven't made that decision. And as I say, we continue to engage effectively with officials across the UK to discuss these issues. But at the moment, they haven't made a decision about what that looks like, and whether it would be a single deposit level or variable deposit levels, or all these issues are still not decided as yet across the other nations. So in that position, it was impossible for us to say what that deposit could be, because it's not been made at that point.
Okay, David, that's helpful. Minister, do you have a view from your discussions whether the mood music of 20 pence per container was going to be something that all the other interested parties in the UK would buy into.
It isn't something we've discussed in detail as to what their scheme might look like, because they haven't yet passed their regulations or indeed given us insight into what those regulations might be. I think Ewan had a comment.
No, Minister, sorry, I just want to push you slightly on this, if I may, is that that seems pretty fundamental basis of this. And you don't believe that's yet been discussed? It
absolutely hasn't been discussed on a four-nation basis, which is why this Internal Market Act exclusion is so impossible for us, because they are saying you must comply with our deposit level, but they haven't even begun the work to establish what that deposit level will be.
Okay, I think Bob wants to come in, but I mean, my point is slightly questions, therefore, where the failure is if you haven't got to that level of granularity when it comes into